Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to BSF Live Session. And if you could take a moment to introduce yourself and kind of give us a little bit of background on who you are, and we'll get the train rolling.
I will kick this off. I'm Jessica Strong. I am the co-director of applied research here at Blue Star Families. And that means I'm primarily in charge of the Military Family Lifestyle Survey. You guys might have heard of it. It's fielding now until June 6th. So that survey takes a broad look at a lot of issues that affect military families, military and veteran families. But today we're focusing on the issue of mental health and suicide in particular. So that's me.
Fantastic. Chris and Betsy, you guys are next.
I'm Betsy Mercado. I am the Executive Director of the Objective Zero Foundation.
And I'm Chris Mercado, the Operations and Partnership Director of the Objective Zero Foundation.
Welcome, Betsy.
I'm August Manzano, and I am a Navy spouse and a mom to 2 babies.
Thank you guys so much for being here. We truly, truly appreciate it. This is such a critical and important topic, and we appreciate your time and diving into this because it can be challenging, but it's so important for our audience to be aware and understand everything that's going on. So we are focused on understanding suicide in military families and what that means for all of us. So if we can start off, I'm going to have you guys talk a little bit about Betsy and Chris. If you can let me know a little bit about your program, Object Zero Foundation, the history, the background, and any critical details you want us to know.
Absolutely. So Chris and I are both co-founders of Objective Zero. We are a tech nonprofit that's dedicated to combating suicide within the military and veteran community. And the idea for Objective Zero was sparked after a phone call between Chris and one of his former soldiers that was really dealing with his transition out of the military, as well as traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress, and was suicidal. And he had reached out for help, couldn't be seen, couldn't get an appointment for 2 days. Luckily, Chris saw over social media that Justin was struggling, and the two of them connected on a 6-hour phone call. And that idea sparked that the simple act of listening can truly save lives. And in order to replicate that call at scale, we used technology and developed and created the Objective Zero app. And it's available on iOS, on the Google Play Store, Apple App Store, and we just released a web app version that you can access from our website, www.objectivezero.org/app. We really wanted to be able to connect the military and veteran community, and that's service members, veterans, their families, and caregivers, and get them connected to peer support through voice, video, and text, and also a wealth of wellness resources from yoga and meditation to free or low-cost mental health care. And I think what really sets us apart from other organizations that are kind of in that crisis and hotline space is that our app users can filter through our ambassador network, and that can be by their age, location, gender, branch of service, if you're in the military, what occupational specialty or deployment locations, to really build those meaningful connections. Also, I wanted to also note that we are not a substitute for professional mental health care. The app is used to connect to someone, just to talk with. You can access the Veterans Crisis Line or 911 through the app. You don't have to know a number. You just click a button and you get connected immediately. Additionally, we're training volunteer, peer, and civilian support ambassadors. And it's everything from gatekeeper training to crisis response plan training. So the app is a place to get support as well as to give support.
So can you tell us, I just have a question about, because I just learned about this app like a couple weeks ago, which was, I felt I should have known it a long time ago because I worked as a crisis responder for a little while. Now, granted, it wasn't with military veteran populations, it was with kids, which is a little different story. But I was so excited to hear about this because one of the things that we know is really important for people who are experiencing like a really low sense of connection to others is needing to feel connected to somebody else, needing to connect with somebody who understands. And we know that military families in particular want somebody who understands the military life, and veterans and service members are that need to have that too. So I love that we are able to, that through your app, we're able to connect with people who, have the same, are in the same branch, are spouses. What are some other ways that you can find somebody who understands you through this app?
Absolutely. And I think it's really important using technology, we can reach our users wherever they are. So we have users in all 50 states and in 27 countries across the world. So wherever military service members and their families and veterans are, we actually have users and volunteers in those locations. And so being able to connect with someone that's in a similar location. So if you're overseas, the resources available to you aren't the same as if you're stateside. And so being able, like I said, connecting to someone that might know the resources in that area is so vital. And it's important that, we reach people where they're at. And so technology really allows us to do that.
Yeah. And I would add to that, just like you said, that prior experience, having been where someone else has been, walked where they've walked, seen what they've seen, or being a military spouse connecting with another military spouse, it really creates that shortcut to trust. And notably, our peer support ambassadors, they come from our community, that military and veteran community. And importantly, we also have some of our peer support ambassadors who aren't in the military community. Some of the feedback that we've received is that some service members or veterans want to speak to someone who wasn't in the military so they can have that environment where they're kind of free to say what they want. There's no stigma, there's no judgment. And so we do have some clergy, chaplains, as well as just some concerned citizens that are available as peer support specialists, as well as some counselors who are doing this in their volunteer time as well.
Yeah, I think I remember, I remember most of our stats, but I don't remember all of them off the top of my head. But I remember that one of the important barriers for people especially for spouses and service members who wanted to get mental health care or get help, but weren't accessing at the moment, was because they didn't feel like the therapist or the person that they were speaking to could understood them. And so I'm so glad that we have that. I was perusing the app last night and saw that you could filter by, and all the way down to MOS. So understanding like your job and the stressors that come with that job in particular. I know we talked a little bit yesterday on our pre-meeting about recruiting and how recruiting can be really stressful, and how that particular MOS has a lot of people who have experienced suicidal thoughts. August, I want to bring you into this conversation because I know you guys are kind of living that life right now.
That we are.
So tell us a little bit about what are the stressors of being a family in recruiting, and also how do you help manage that?
Well, some of the stressors that we have, it sounds so silly to say it when you think about it and you say it out loud, but the hours are they're brutal. And they're not like deployment hours where they're here and they're gone and they're here and they're gone and they're here and they're gone and they're working their way up to a big deployment, and you kind of get used to the schedule in and out. You have daddy for a weekend, or you have mama for a weekend, or you've got them for a week or two, and they go to work on the ship or whatever, and then they come home. Recruiting is nonstop. It's 24 hours. Their phone is ringing all the time. You have to have very strong trust in your spouse because you have 17, 18-year-old kids texting, or I say kids, they're not real kids. But they're calling at all hours of the night. And so you're like, who are you talking to? Why are you on your work phone all the time? And, your kids are like, oh, daddy doesn't have his phone. My 3-year-old she'll see my husband's work phone on the front entryway table because he puts it there on Fridays and tries not to touch it all weekend. And she goes, Daddy, your phone. You don't have your phone. What are you doing? It's not in your hand. So they've been ingrained that daddy always has to have his phone in his hand, and daddy always has to be working. He can never relax. He can never just sit on the ground and play. And they don't understand anything different, which is stressful to me because I'm like, I want them to be able to just play with dad. I want them to just be able to have a normal relationship and a normal, family dinner without the phone ringing. And the numbers being held, you have to get so many numbers in recruiting. You have to get so many people, and that's stressful, especially when you're an introvert. My husband is an introvert. I am not. So sales for me isn't necessarily as hard, but for him, it's torture. He's really good at what he does when he can do it in its full capacity. But having, why didn't you get that kid? Why'd you let that kid go? You should have, you should get that person in. We need to get the people in, get them in, get them. He's like, but I want to put someone where they want to be, not just because I need a number. And so it's that internal conflict that he struggles with all the time of, I want to put good people in the Navy, but I also want to put people in the Navy who want to be there. And the stress that we get, why do you have to work extra hours? I know it's ridiculous in the Navy. If you were working at a civilian job, you'd be working overtime and all that stuff. It's frustrating. So we have to really keep our lines of communication open. And for a long time, we weren't communicating. And it was really sad because we were struggling. And once I talked to my girlfriends, they're like, seriously, just talk to your husband. You have to let him know. You have to tell him what you're feeling, and he has to be able to tell you what he's feeling. And we have to open that space up for the kids to say, hey, I'm scared. I'm frustrated. I don't understand why you guys are arguing. I thought everything was fine. So you add in all of the other stressors, and we basically just had to rely on people outside of our circle and outside of our military circle, and make friends outside who didn't necessarily understand, but get it in different ways.
Right,
just having
just like Betsy and Chris were saying, sometimes you want to be part of the military community, sometimes you don't. Like, that communication piece is so important.
It's huge. It really, really is. And having people that get different lifestyles. So my best friend's husband's an ER nurse. He works crazy hours. He's exhausted all the time. And so she kind of understood. She's like, I get it. I'm home alone at night. I don't have my husband here because he's working until 2:00 in the morning. So we were able to kind of connect on that level of, I just need to vent. I'm not really angry at his career, or I'm in a situation. I just need to talk. I need another adult to talk to because I only have 2 little kids to talk to all day long. So that's building up that circle around you of people who understand or want to understand what you're going through. Huge.
That's perfect. And you bring up, like, I know we talk a lot about military and veteran suicides, rightly so. Like, that's a really important issue. I know in our 2020 Military Family Lifestyle Survey, our recently transitioned veterans, the ones who have exited military service within 3 years prior to the survey fielding, 11% of them reported that they had experienced suicidal thoughts in the last year. That's a huge percentage. That's a big issue. But like August, you bring up a good point that it's not just limited to those veterans. It's not just limited to the service member. It's also the spouse who's left at home while the service member is working long hours or away on deployment and just need another adult to talk to that you don't have to tell to put their socks and shoes on for the 50th time in a row before you leave the house. Like, it's having another adult, another person who gets you, understands you, and communicating with them. So I know that the app, Operation Objective Zero, I keep trying to say operation because we got a lot of operations in this MSO VSO space, but Objective Zero's app lets you talk to other spouses, which I think is really critical because that's sort of an area that we have kind of overlooked in the past few years of, spouses who are feeling alone and isolated and are having those mental health struggles.
Absolutely. Thank you guys both for that. And I really appreciate, August, you brought up great points, as well as Chris, you and Betsy did too. And both sides, whether it's your military or, like you said before, speaking of the veteran families and suicide and the things we have to deal with, there's just so many layers, and the support system for each side is critical. And without that, we're not going to flourish. If you guys could really quickly touch on some of the biggest challenges that you feel like you face, like, for example, I think we mentioned before, prior to this Facebook Live, a lot of people talk about the after effects, right? The survivors of those who have taken their life. And there's always these questions and concerns, how I didn't see this, or where were the red flags at? Like, there were no standout moments or actions that were taken. What would you say to them? We do have the evidence, we do have the data, but then sometimes people don't always align with what we have right now. out there, what are your recommendations? What is your guidance, or even just personal perspectives on that?
Yeah, Charo, that's a great question, and we actually get that kind of feedback often. That looking back on things, we didn't see any warning signs, or that we didn't see anything that indicated that someone was struggling. But oftentimes there are no warning signs, and in some cases there are warning signs, but we just don't see them. We don't recognize them as warning signs. In the case of Justin Miller, the former soldier that I served with, I saw some of the signs, I recognized them as signs, but I wasn't sure. And so I had to ask that really difficult question: are you thinking about hurting yourself? And I think that that's so important. But it's also important that we educate ourselves on what those warning signs might be. And they can be, changes in behavior. They can be, in the case of Justin, disturbing posts on social media. They could be, disturbing emails, mood changes, giving things away. We're talking about feelings of hopelessness, or even a comment. I wish I were, the world would be better off without me. Or talking about killing oneself. This could be alcohol and substance abuse. There's lots of warning signs. And in some cases, sometimes people do a really good job of hiding them. But what we've often found is that, these warning signs will appear, but we won't recognize them as signs. Think of it like pieces of a puzzle. We only see it in hindsight. When we put these pieces together, do we see the bigger picture? So that's why we have to remain vigilant and keep our eyes out for any of these warning signs. And then when we see them, we need to reconnect, we need to reestablish those connections, and then we need to start asking those difficult questions.
I just noticed that in the chat, Brenda just dropped some information about the In Transition program. So I love that one of the things that we have the opportunity to do in this Facebook Live is share resources that people may not have known about before, one of which being Objective Zero, another of which being In Transition. We also have the MFlex. You guys y'all may have heard of them, the Military Family Life Consultants. I keep trying to call them counselors, who also can offer some assistance. There's also the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, which you can text, or you can chat with, or you can call directly. You don't have to be. You can also call if you're supporting somebody who you're concerned about, and you're concerned about their behavior. You notice maybe some of the warning signs, but you're not quite sure. You don't really know how to handle it. So there's lots of resources that we can add to.
Thank you, Jess. And August, from your perspective, you mentioned that your husband is an introvert. And so having to be put in this new position like this, which is extremely overwhelming, as you spoke of before, regarding mental health, I know that you said, even for yourself, you have to check in with your friends and communicate. What are you guys doing outside of traditional fit when you have time? Is there anything that you guys are doing to ensure that he's doing okay? I know you probably noticed behavioral changes for him too, and that you're doing okay, like collectively as a family, to just completely remove all of those additional stressors, even just for a moment, because I know he's on call 24/7.
Yeah,
but
we try to do fun things. So I try to encourage him to find something that he likes. So he loves golf. So for him, golf is his happy place. So as often as, financially possible, because we don't live anywhere near a military golf course anymore right now, I have, go play a round of 9 holes, go grab your guy friend that you are super close to, guys, go get some 9 holes. Now, doesn't always work out, because sometimes I'm like, okay, well, I had other plans, or we have this going on. But I try to, go and do, because he wants to be alone. He doesn't want to be around other people because, it drains him. So being alone, he can recharge. He can do what he needs to do. He can think about whatever he needs to think about. He can blare whatever music into his iPod, AirPod, whatever's as loud as he wants. Just go play some golf. He also bought a mountain bike, and he goes up around here and goes to the trails around Folsom Lake, and goes and rides his bike on the mountains, which I don't do. So it helps him just to kind of get out and get alone and recharge his batteries. And then he'll come home and we do things with the kids. Like we'll have a water gun fight, or we'll play chalk on the driveway, barbecue with our neighbors across the street, invite our friends over and have dinner and let the kids run around and play, get their energy out, and just kind of recharge my batteries. Being an extrovert, having people around me helps me not feel so cramped and alone and, you know, in dark and scary places. It helps me to be out of myself and to entertain other people. So we try really hard. With the lockdown and not being able to go to church, it really hurt us a lot, because church in your living room with the kids running around isn't always the same as going and sitting in a sanctuary and worshiping with other people. So for us, not being able to go to church for a long time was really, really stressful, and it was hard on us. So we had to figure out other things to do. So we would go on a drive and drive around and put worship music on and talk to the kids and go look at the pretty flowers, or go enjoy, you know, a cup of coffee in a different part of town, or go look exploring in downtown Sacramento, or, you know, just little things to kind of just get us out of the house, because the same four walls start to close in after a while. And he knows when I need it. So he'll call my best friends and be like, she needs to get out. Go take her somewhere. Go do something. So my best friend came and kidnapped me one morning, and we went and got pedicures. And it was the most wonderful surprise I had ever had. And he knew that I was getting to a point where it was going to be, you know, sad, grumpy August. And sad, grumpy August isn't fun. So even just going and saying, okay, she needs a cup of coffee, someone come get her. Let's just do this. I've got the kids, you know, go grocery shopping and take 5 hours. I don't care. So, which is helpful. So the little things that we do, it's not a lot, because we don't have a lot that we can still do, because he still does have restrictions right now, but we do what we can with what we have. So yeah. I like gardening. I got a whole bunch of new plants. Like my little plant back here needed a little space, so I had to move him. So I've been going to Home Depot or Walmart or Green Acres is our local nursery, and getting new plants, learning about the new plants that I like and how to take care of them. So it just adds a level of something else to take care of that I can not screw up, basically.
Well, you're more talented than I am, because I have definitely gone through multiple sets of plants. I tried to have hanging plants once. I went through like 3 or 4 sets of hanging plants in the same season, and just said, you know what, I'm not made for this.
This is my only hanging plant right here, and it just doesn't have. I didn't realize it was as big as it was when I bought it, because it was all crumpled.
But it's flourishing because you took care of it, which brings us to another point I'm so glad you brought up about it's Mental Health Action Day tomorrow. Mental Health Action Day is focusing on taking care of our own mental health in the wake of COVID, because COVID made it real hard, especially for those of us who are, you know, dealing with kids who are virtual schooling and, you know, maybe are not adapting super well to virtual schooling. But you, August, brought up so many little things that you can do. Like, we think self-care means that you have to take a bubble bath every night. And, you know, I don't have the childcare, the time, or the patience to sit there. And, right. So it's finding those little things that maybe aren't expensive, or maybe are little things that you can work into your day that just bring you a break or a moment or a sense of joy for just a minute, building those things into your day. So I'm so glad that you brought those things up.
Well, I'm glad that any little idea can spark something else in someone. I have a friend, she's like, okay, we have a Facebook group, and we're going to do a daily thing. We're going to do for 45 days, one thing that makes you happy today. She goes, I don't care if it was, I woke up and my hair was fluffy and I thought it was funny. Anything that makes you giggle. Yeah, right. Anything that makes you giggle or laugh or brought you joy, tell us what it is. And so then we all start to encourage each other daily. And she's like, okay, I see 8 of you saw this post and only 1 of you has posted something. What's going on, guys? Talk to me. So then we can open up a conversation. And it's something that she actively does every single day. She's a helper. She wants people to be comfortable. She wants people to like who they are and what they're doing in their lives. And it really helps, because there's been days where nothing was good today. She's like, but you woke up, you lived, you had a bad day, or did you have a bad moment that turned into you stewing about it and making a bad day? I was like, oh, okay. Different perspective.
I love that encouragement. And, you know, I think that's one of the things not specifically that, but that reminds me of one of the things that people are concerned about when we talk about the issue of mental health or the issue of suicide. Is like people don't really know what to say. Like,
Yeah.
hey, just put a smile on your face. You're going to be okay. That's not sufficient. That's not going to help. So
Because
I
you
know
can
Betsy
and not be okay.
Yeah, it's okay to have a moment or even a little while where things are not going great, and it's okay to understand that. Chris and Betsy, you mentioned the peer ambassador program. What are some things that you can help that you let peer ambassadors, that you train peer ambassadors to say or to explore when they are talking with somebody and they just don't know really what to say?
That's a great question. We're actually working on that right now. We're developing another course with Psych Armor Institute. You were talking about the survey. We've done our own surveys, and I'll put a shout out that if you haven't taken the Blue Star Military Lifestyle Survey, do it. It helps other organizations. We're a very small organization, and the data that's coming from that has been so helpful for us and helped inform what we can do as another nonprofit that's focused on the veteran and military community. So there's a quick shout out for that. So take care of that. But I think it's really important to be genuine and sincere. And when you're talking to someone, a lot of our communications within the Objective Zero app are through text messaging. And sometimes it's hard to get those conversations starting. Sometimes it's our ambassadors reaching out to our users, just saying, hey, was thinking about you. Hope you have a great day. Sometimes it's our users that are reaching out to the ambassador saying, I'm really struggling today. And it's just, being sincere and asking questions, what's working for you, what's not working for you. Just being willing to listen and being able just to, offer a space that's, there's no judgment, don't offer those judgments,
Yeah.
I think that's what's most important, you're talking August about, checking in on your friends and even your husband, your spouse. I think that's what we can all do when we're thinking about taking action, is being willing just to be open, be vulnerable, and also be willing to check on others, whether they're struggling or not. You can always put a smile on your face and, go along like everything's fine when really it's not. And so it's the willingness to share, what you're really going through.
Yeah, and I think it's important to check, like you mentioned, checking in on people, whether you think that they're having a rough time or not. Because sometimes when we get into that rough moment, like August said, we wake up and we cannot think of a single thing that makes us happy or brings us joy. It's just nothing feels good, nothing looks good. It's just all blah. So you have to check in on those during those good times too, to find out what is it that made you happy today? What was that little thing that you enjoyed that brought that tiny spark to your day? So checking in with friends, whether it's, whether they're having a good day or a not good day, both are equally okay.
We came up with my closest girlfriends, we came up with code words. So it sounds kind of funny, but it's, my girlfriend was going through a really, really rough patch, and she was injured and she was painful, and we were really worried about her. And she said, I'm not going to do anything, because she was talking really dark, and it was really scary. And so my, ombudsman training kicked in, and I started listening, and I said, okay, talk to her husband, paid attention to what was going on. And she said, I'm not going to do anything because I'm not brave enough. I said, well, that's okay. She said, I need to vent, and I need to not be okay for a little bit. I'm just going to give you my code word, and that tells you that I'm okay. I just need to just let it out. And so we came up with her code word, and we all use it. It's like, okay, I just need to vent. This is what's going on, and I'm not going to hurt myself. I'm not going to do anything. I know it's going to sound dark. I know it's going to sound twisty. I know it's going to be bad, but I promise I'm not there. And so that's helped a lot, because it took a lot of the worry and a lot of the reaction that you have as a friend and as a support person, because you want to fix it. You want to be right there. You are like, okay, well, please don't, and you start going overboard, and then it just overwhelms the person. And it's just like, no, I need to vent, and I need to get it all out, because if the dark thoughts stay in, they're going to stay in. If I get them out, then I'll be okay. And it worked really well. We were able to get through it. And so now we all know in our, circle of friends, we know, okay, if I say the code word, then it's just, I just need to vent and then we'll be okay. And it helped immensely. It didn't think it would, but for us and our personalities, it was very, very cathartic.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, August. It just, like you guys all said, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to visit the island from time to time. We just can't maintain residency there, right? So
Exactly.
we have to at some point come back and take care of ourselves and be healthy and be well. I want to shift gears just a little bit and go on to, which is suicide is a very sensitive topic, specifically when it comes to children. And so we want to explore that a little bit. Jess, can you talk about the numbers and the stats for us?
Yeah. And I was actually thinking about this as August was talking about supporting friends and supporting other people. We've really talked a lot about supporting adults and connecting with adults and friends and family members who might be experiencing this sort of challenge. But we sort of gloss over the idea that it might also occur to kids, and it does. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we explored in the 2020 Military Family Lifestyle Survey for the first time was looking at suicidal ideation in children. We asked our active duty family member respondents, either the spouse or the service member, whether their child had expressed suicidal thoughts in the past year. And about 6% of our active duty family member respondents said that they had a child express thoughts of suicide in the past year. Well, if it's scary when a friend of yours talks about these dark, dark thoughts, imagine how it is to have your child talk about dark, deep, concerning issues. So I did want to talk about that a little bit, and what are some of the things that we can do to help parents who are needing to support their kids, because kids have had a really stressful year this past year. It has been, we ask a lot of military kids in general because they have a parent who's here and gone often. They're moving all the time. They're changing schools. They're changing friends. They're changing activities. And now we have added COVID on top of that. And now we can't go to our activities. We're trying to virtual school and sit in front of a computer all day. So we've asked a lot of kids, and it's challenging for them this past year. So what are some things that we can do to support family members, parents who are trying to help their kids through this?
I think that's a fantastic question. We have a high schooler, one that's graduating this weekend. We have one in college. And I think it's, really talking to, especially around military communities, the counselors at the schools are really a great resource. You had talked about the military family life consultants as well. They have been phenomenal. Every place that we've lived, I've always known the number, who that is, just in case. And I think we also have to have those honest conversations with our kids. Some of those same warning signs that Chris had talked about earlier, maybe not the financial and relationship issues for younger kids, but, being aware of what's going on in their lives and talking about it and getting help as soon as you think that something might be wrong, or getting that extra support, I think really goes a long way. Having those open conversations with your kids. I saw something not too long ago when you talk to your kids, ask them, do you just want me to listen, or do you want me to help you solve that problem? And so that's something that we've implemented with our kids. They are older, but usually they want to solve problems themselves, but sometimes they need that extra support. And so I think listening to your kids just as much as you listen to your friends or your spouse or your support system is just vital.
Betsy, something that you said triggered a thought in my mind. Kids, especially, as they progress through to high school, they experience all of the same stressors that we do in the military, and that the military, maybe spouse or dependent, might be experiencing as well. But you can add to that so many stressors that we as the adults don't actually have to deal with, or at least not perhaps to the same degree. I look at our kids. Our daughter went to 12 different schools in 12 years of primary education, including 4 different high schools. That degree of transition can be incredibly difficult. The lack of continuity between her relationships, I'm sure, was very difficult for her. But then you have to add to that this environment of social media and bullying, this kind of environment of bullying that exists that really didn't exist for you or I when we went through high school. I think, when we add all of those additional concerns on it, it really amplifies it and puts into context what our youth are experiencing.
Thank you guys. Also, too, I had a quick question too for you, Chris and Rebecca. I know a lot of veterans probably speak to you frequently about because with their children and their struggles. So they're dealing with suicide as a veteran, and then the children are witnessing a lot of their challenges and their struggles. What recommendations you got for your peers to discuss with the veterans? Like, hey, this is great to talk to your kids about, or explain this, or children are very forgiving and resilient. Or is there programs that you guys think are phenomenal for military children who have parents who are struggling with suicidal ideations or recovering from suicidal ideations? And how are they going to move forward to ensure that their mental health is good as a unit?
I think that's a phenomenal question. We primarily deal with adults, and it's usually the spouse that is reaching out because their husband is, or excuse me, their spouse is struggling, whether that's a veteran or service member. And so we haven't had a lot of experience with people reaching out for support for their kids. And after this discussion, I'm actually going to be working on adding in some more resources, just because that is something that we need to be, having those conversations and be thinking about. But I think specifically for the military family, those MFLACs are just phenomenal. And I think clergy as well, reaching out to chaplains and your priests, their ministers, they're also a really great form of support. It's a little bit harder with COVID because not all the opportunities are there to meet face to face. Another really great organization is Cohen's Military Network.
You beat me to it. I was about to say that.
That is one that we share with veterans and service members, their families alike, just because they are distributed. There's so many locations across the United States that you can get that extra support. But if they're not getting it within the military system, it's really important that we're getting them connected to a resource that's going to help them, that has that experience, the military competency and expertise to make sure that that family and that child is getting the support they need.
Though, it kind of underscores a real problem with the data, though. There's just not enough information. There's not enough transparency in the data and information about the impact of military life on spouses and military dependents. I think that we would be well served to have access to that information and to have the DoD and the VA, tracking that kind of information on both the spouses and also the military, children and the dependents, because that will, really inform our services and what we're providing and what other veteran service organizations are providing to military families.
So I have two things that I want to add to that. One is I'm so glad you talk about tracking and being able to measure these things, because in the 2021 survey, fielding right now, we're asking more specific questions. We're getting into this issue a little bit more, particularly around children, military children's mental health, because we know if you're a service member and your teenager is expressing thoughts of suicide or has attempted suicide, that is going to occupy all of your mental energy. You have no mental energy left to focus on the mission. It's a readiness issue. It's also a human issue, but it's a readiness issue as well. So we want to make sure, we want to be able to understand, like, what are the things that are particularly stressful for military kids. We know relocation is one. We know deployment is one. So we're diving into this a little bit more in the survey this year. We're asking specifically about mental health for individual children rather than just your children in general. We want to know about your individual child's mental health. We want to know about their age, so we can look at, is this a problem that is focused in adolescents and high schoolers who are leaving activities behind and leaving friends behind if they relocate, or are we seeing it in even younger ages? Are we seeing more of a mental health concern right after relocation? Are we seeing it for kids who are virtual schooling versus in-person schooling? Like, those are the type of things that we can explore in the survey if we have enough of a response, and we can explore those issues and help guide and direct both resources and policy. The other thing that I wanted to add is, I would be remiss if I didn't, as we're sharing different resources that are available, Cohen Veterans Network is wonderful. They do have telehealth. So if you aren't able to go into a mental health appointment or a clinic, you can set up a telehealth appointment. This is especially useful, I think, for spouses who have difficulty finding childcare while they're trying to, right. So you could, go out go out in your car, do your therapy appointment, have the kids watching TV in another room. Like, it just makes it a little bit more accessible.
Put Blippi on and just kind of escape into my car. Okay, I could do that.
or the bathroom or the closet or wherever it is that you hide your snacks and escape. I know that mom life. The other one that I wanted to mention is the Barry Robinson Center. It's another new resource that I hadn't heard about until this year. It is a residential treatment center. Now, not all kids who experience mental health challenges will have suicidal thoughts. Not all kids who have suicidal thoughts need residential care. But when we get to needing residential care, the Barry Robinson Center is a center that focuses on military kids. They work with only military kids. So they have that military cultural competency, and it's for a residential mental health center for children. So it brings in the best of understanding what military life is like and what those stressors are for kids, as well as expertise in mental health care and pediatric mental health care. So I had to bring up both of those things.
Well, and they're good things to have too, because I didn't know any of that. I'm an ombudsman. I know resources, but I had no idea any of that was happening when my 6-year-old said, I'd rather be dead than go to school. So I can't do this. I'm not smart enough. I can't handle this. This is, my teacher doesn't like me, and she does. That's had nothing to do with it. But he was so anxious and he was so overwhelmed. He's looking at me and said, I don't want to be alive anymore. What do you do with that when it's a 6-year-old? You kind of, teenagers are touchy, and they're, it's a thin line to cross with a teenager, but you can kind of like have that adult conversation with them because they're a little bit more emotionally and mentally processed than a 6-year-old. So it was really scary for me. I pulled him immediately from school. I was like, okay, well, if you can't do this, and if this is the stressor, then we're going to take this stressor away. And it improved immensely. But then, I get your kid isn't going to school, so you're going to be arrested for truancy, and you're going to have this problem, and you're going to do this. And it was just the mom guilt. But I was able to kind of take that and just talk to my husband about it, and say, okay. And he's like, you're not failing. You're not doing anything wrong. Our child's mental health was so much more important than him going to school every day. He learns. It's not that he's not learning. It's not that he's not doing stuff. He's also 6. He can take first grade over again. Everyone gets a gap year. And whether you take it after you graduate high school, or if you take it, halfway into your first grade year and you repeat first grade, everybody gets a gap year. And it's how I took a 10-year gap year. It's okay, but when it's your kid and they're little, I was not expecting to have that conversation with my 6-year-old.
Yeah.
It was not anything I was ever prepared for. I had that conversation with adult friends. I had that conversation with teenage friends as a teenager, in a professional manner, as an ombudsman, with a spouse, helping to get the help. But then everything was locked down. I couldn't even get him in to a counselor. I couldn't get him in so it was just on us as parents to say, okay, buddy, what's really going on? And I had no idea. I'm not a counselor. I didn't know, but we inched our way through it, and he's much better now because we took that stressor away. We took that camera out of his face, and and that was the biggest thing, is that the cameras were in his face. He was having to sit still on a video, and he can't sit still. He's 6. And he's a boy, and he is my child. So,
I also have a 6-year-old boy who went through virtual schooling, and I have a lovely photo of him like bent over the back of the chair, paying absolutely no attention because he's 6, and the video is just not going to work. But you're not the only parent. I wanted to bring up that you're not by any means the only parent who is dealing with it. The only parent who made the choice that this is not working for my kid. I'm just going to pull it out. We saw homeschooling rates for both civilians and military families increase, a ton over this past year, because it just didn't work for some kids. And it wasn't, you make the best decision for the child that you have, not the child that the school district has.
Well, in some kids, it worked great. And that I would love to see that aspect be able to continue for those kids, because they don't do well in a classroom setting. So I think the lessons that we've learned as parents and, as military members and as adults is kids are adaptable, but we also have to pay attention to what they're adapting to and if they're actually enjoying their adaptation. So some kids get bullied. They don't do well in a classroom setting. They loved being online. Let's keep them online. Other kids like mine hate being online, thrive in a classroom setting. Let's get him back into doing that and back in a classroom because it's easier for him, it's easier for me, and it's easier for the teachers too. You're not having to struggle and fight, having to teach someone who has no, one of the kids in the neighborhood just sits there and he all day, he's asleep the entire time of class. And she just turns his camera off and she turns the sound off. And it's like that you can't fall asleep in the classroom. I mean, I used to in high school, but that was different. But it's getting to that point where, and we're understanding our kids and they're not just complaining and they're not just melting down because they want to throw a fit. There's actual reasons behind what they're doing, and having the survey out there from Blue Star and being able to just say, I can be honest. I don't have to, fudge the numbers here because you're actually asking me the hard questions. And I'm only like a quarter of the way through this year's survey because I'm taking my time and answering the questions and doing it and actually thinking about my answers and not just status quo. Oh yeah, everything's great. We're doing wonderful. Everything's fantastic. No, because it's not. I'm stressed. I can't. James has to take time off work just for me to go to a doctor's appointment to get my blood drawn. And he has to be off work. And so then there comes the stressor of, well, why does your wife have so many doctor's appointments? Why can't you, don't you have babysitters? No, we don't. We don't know. We've lived here for 2.5 years and we know our neighbors, but not well enough to leave my kids with them in the middle of the day because they work. So well, why don't you have childcare? There's just none around here. We don't live close to a military facility. We are in recruiting. We're in Sacramento. Yeah, there's a daycare down the street, but they're full. They don't take walk-ins. It's developing that understanding that things are different right now. And like, well, what would you do if he was back on a ship? I was like, well, I'd have a military community around me. I'd have a neighbor that was in the same situation where I could say, hey, girlfriend, can you watch my kids for a couple hours? Or I could drop them in here and there and I'd be okay. And someone I trust, someone I know. I don't have that here. So it's hard and it's taxing. And thank you, Brittany. I just saw the comment.
Preach. Like, boy, I hear you. Finding, babysitters do not grow on trees, you guys, and they're not cheap. So this doesn't always happen. And also, if you have a kid who you're a little worried about because they've said some really, things that have you concerned, or if they have if they have special needs, that makes it much harder to find a sitter who is available in the middle of the day for you to take some time to go to a doctor's appointment, and B, who can manage your kids or manage your care recipients, your kids, in a way that you feel comfortable with. I have run through my fair share of sitters, and some are great and some are not so great. I have definitely had. I'll tell you the story about the chandelier on the kitchen table another time. But we've been through some sitters, and it's not that simple. So it's finding those connections in the community. Sometimes we have them. Sometimes when we're in a civilian community on our own, we don't have them because we don't have people who are there to understand, who understand what we're going through.
Well, and then they don't understand that we aren't millionaires either. Like, they just have this assumption that military makes so much money. I don't know where they got this idea. Like, I've never, ever thought that we made a ton of money. I mean, we make enough to live. That's not the point. But we don't have all this extra income. The government doesn't give us all this extra money just to have a babysitter watch my kid for a couple hours. So it's like, I yes, I would love to be able to take them with me. But at this point in time, I don't have that option. And so the office has to be flexible, and they're used to the kids coming and sitting in the office and being there for, you know, an hour or two when I have a doctor's appointment, or if I have to go run an errand that the kids can't come with me for, which doesn't happen often, but just getting, you know, my allergy shots. It's every 2 weeks, and it takes, you know, it's a 5-minute transaction that takes almost 2 hours of time, because we have to drive, pick up my husband, get him there, or leave the kids at the office. And then it's crazy. And I wish we had a babysitter stipend. Oh, Adrian, that would be wonderful. A babysitter stipend. Right. And it's hard
I'm not even talking about the stipend part. I'm talking about like finding somebody who will work, who will work for what you need. Like, it's not just about being able to afford it. That's a whole different issue. It's a big issue, a whole different issue.
Well,
but it's also being able to find it.
Well, yeah, I just had a mom in my neighborhood. She's like, I just retired. Does anyone need a sitter? I was like, yes, please. I need help. And I know her. She's a wonderful person, but she had been working. She's like, I decided I was going to retire. I'm good. Want me to watch your kids? Yes.
I hear you. I'm so glad that you found, at least, you know, you might have a lead on a sitter there. Right. I know that childcare is a huge barrier to both mental health care and it's a concern. I feel like we might have moved a little bit farther away from the topic at hand. So as much as I could talk about this for a while, let's pull us back to focus on the issue of, you know, addressing and what do we do to help people who are experiencing thoughts of suicide, or how do we take action to support ourselves if we're already having we are ourselves experiencing mental health challenges, not necessarily that rise to the point of having suicidal thoughts, but just having some mental health challenges, as so many of us are in this post-COVID world that we live in.
And August, to your point, I actually had a question about how you handled your 6-year-old coming to you. Because first, I commend you as a mother, because not a lot of 6-year-olds will come and communicate something like that. So that says a lot about the communication you have with your children, which is fantastic. But for courses of actions, you mentioned that you changed his setup for school. You got down to the root of it. I know that had to take away a lot for you guys, and especially for your husband being active duty consistently. Like, what was your approach wise? Like, is he now, was it your son? It was your son, correct?
My son, yeah.
Is he now in therapy? Is he just flourishing that you don't feel like he needs it, and so you just do check-ins like, hey?
I would love for him to be in therapy. But most of the therapists, especially the child therapists in our area, aren't seeing patients in person. And so they want it to be on Zoom or, you know, telehealth. And that was the problem, is he doesn't do well with a camera in his face. He wants you to film him, but he doesn't want to see himself on camera. So he would just absolutely refuse to participate. And I can't even get into any of those. Like, I can't even get in for myself. So getting him into that, I remember when he was diagnosed with emotional dysregulation disorder, the psychiatrist gave me tips and tricks to help during a meltdown. And so I just kind of took that information and used it to the best of my ability to say, okay, this is how we're going to do it. This is what we're going to do. We're going to take a break. We're going to let your brain just kind of calm itself down. And then I asked him, I was like, do you really wish that you were not here? That do you really want to not be alive anymore? And it took him, I waited a little bit, and he said, no, Mommy, I don't know how to handle this. And I was like, well, honey, I don't know how to handle it either. So let's handle this together. And so we'd kind of get to talking about it. So then I would bring in things that he was interested in. And I said, Mommy and Daddy would be really sad if you weren't here. And, Sissy would just be distraught if her Bubba's wasn't here. And so it kind of helped him say, okay, well, I can't say these things because if I don't mean it, because it's hurtful. But at the same time, if I'm actually really scared, then I need to tell my mom, I don't like the thoughts that I'm having. These are scary. And so just kind of paying attention to how he is and being his advocate, even within our own family, unit. It's like he's not throwing a fit just to throw a fit. He's upset about something, and we need to figure out what it is that he's upset about. And being his advocate, even with myself, saying, okay, he's not just misbehaving because he wants to be misbehaving. There's something else there. And he has big emotions, and he doesn't know how to handle those big emotions. And I would love to get him into a therapy, even just like a counseling therapy. But right now they're not available. They're backed up, they're overbooked, they're double booked, or they don't take TRICARE, or that's a big one, is they don't take, there's only 2 or 3 in our area that take it. So,
especially an issue if you are not near a military community like that. Yeah.
It's a work in progress, and I probably didn't always do the best things, and I probably did some good things. So far he's okay.
Something that August just said actually triggered a thought in my mind. I was recently on a panel that was talking about this very question. What can we be doing? And particularly in the active duty military, I think we can do a better job of normalizing help-seeking behavior. My fellow panelists brought up this amazing observation that in the active duty military, the military spends more time and money looking at my teeth than they do my psychological health. And I think it's a very powerful observation that in the military, especially, we haven't yet created a culture that encourages help-seeking behaviors. And as leaders, I think we need to do a better job of being honest, open, candid, and vulnerable with our own experiences, our own struggles, because we're people too, and we experience these exact same struggles. And unfortunately, over the course of a 20-year career, we put on that smile on our face. We put our uniform on, and we pretend that we're not experiencing these things. And then we go through this tremendous life transformation into becoming a veteran family. And all of a sudden, those support structures are gone. I think my fellow panelist was right. We need to do a better job of normalizing help-seeking behaviors.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you guys completely for being here and taking out the time. We really do appreciate it. If you could each just give us 2 takeaways that you think are important and critical for everyone to know today before we close this out.
I'll go ahead and start. I think being vulnerable, sharing that you're struggling as an adult, being open and allowing your kids, your family members to be vulnerable and open as well. And I think we all play a really important part when it comes to suicide prevention. We can all be aware of the signs. We can all, reach out to one another. And I think that's what I'll continue to do is reaching out. And I encourage all of you to do as well.
I agree. It just being able to be vulnerable and finding other people to talk to. I mean, and learning new resources. I have several new resources today for my portfolio of things that I need and things that I can have. Cohen and the the Barry Robinson and the Cohen veterans, and even with you guys. So it's amazing. And then to continue to show how important it is to do surveys like the Blue Star Families Military Life Survey, and to participate and to speak out and to say it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to not live the status quo, because no one really is, and I think it's great. And there is support out there, and it's wonderful to have that support.
Thank you. Yes.
Well, I mean, mine is kind of obvious, right? Like if we want to make some changes about this, if we want to understand it, we need to understand it a little bit better. If we want to understand it a little bit better, we need to measure it. So I encourage all of you who are military or veteran affiliated in some way, whether you're a spouse or a service member or an adult child, or or a parent of a service member, to take the survey and let us know where you are, whether it is about suicidal ideation or some other issue that is impacting you, in whether another mental health issue, a financial issue, I've been away from my service member for 7 of the past 18 years, and that's a lot of time to be away. Whatever the issue is, if we don't hear about it and don't measure it, we can't take that to people to make changes. So take the survey at bluestarfam.org/survey.
Take it.
Yes. Thank you guys so much. This was absolutely incredible. We must do it again.
Yes.
You all are so
Thank you.
important, and all the work that you're all doing is phenomenal. We truly appreciate each and every one of you.